What's up, guys? It is Pugway or Connor here, and I'm going to be doing a quick little overview tutorial of some basic XCOM 2 modding tools. Now, for those of you that have been following XCOM 2, you know it's an incredibly moddable game, and for those of you that have actually tried it, you realize that the documentation that comes with the title isn't so swell. So the community over on Reddit has been doing a great job of kind of piecing together all of the different things that we need to know in order to make sure that the game is moddable. So I am going to shoot you guys over to subreddit reddit.com/r/xdev. A lot of my information comes from here, between a couple of different Reddit users who have helped me out with some things and who have also made some of their own guides in text format. So Jal0001 really kind of got the ball rolling with this whole thing, and I also got some great feedback from this gentleman here, Iriiriiri. So, using some of their information, I'm going to spread some of that on to you guys today so that you can hopefully start making some XCOM 2 mods quickly. So, Complete Beginner's Guide, the first thing that you're going to need to do. To get to your XCOM modding tools after you've bought the game, you can go up to Library here in your Steam and head on down to Tools. And here's a whole bunch of stuff that you might not have known you had before. These are all different tools that come with whatever games you have. All the way down at the bottom, you're going to find the XCOM 2 development tools. Now this is about a 50-60 gigabyte download. It comes with all of the asset scripts, sound files, all of that sort of stuff that come with the base game uncompressed so that they can be worked with and used. So this is definitely a download you're going to want to start and come back to at a later date. But once you've got that downloaded, just like any other Steam title, we can double click on that to launch it. And it's going to bring us into our IDE, or our Integrated Development Environment. This one's based off of Visual Studio. And we've got our XCOM mod buddy right there. And we're going to go ahead and click on New Mod. Now for access, this set us up with a couple of different default mod types. We've got a default mod right here, empty mod, which I wouldn't recommend starting with. This is pretty much just a blank file. And then also some example class overrides, map packs, missions, voice packs, weapons, etc. that you can kind of click through. They're not as helpful as I'd like, but they are there. But the default mod will set you up with all the files you need and then allow you to kind of fill in the blanks with whatever you want to build. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be showing you guys how to set up the IDE to work with XCOM 2, and I'm going to show you how to do a quick INI, or an ini file edit, that you can actually publish to the Steam Workshop. That sounds kind of trivial. If you've been using or doing anything on PC, you know all about ini files and ini edits, but the ini files that come with XCOM 2 are comprehensive. You can do a lot of really cool stuff. A lot of the basic mods that you're going to see coming out right now, and a lot of the ones on the Steam Workshop right now, are just simple ini file edits. So with this information, you should be able to make pretty much any rebalance changes that you want to the game. So right down here, you can see where your default location is going to be. By default, it likes to direct you into your Documents folder, and by default, Windows 10 likes that to be on OneDrive. Definitely something worth noting, because on my Windows 7 and Windows 8 machines, I had redirected my documents to a different hard drive, and Windows 10 kept it the same way, which I did run into some issues with. We do need to be able to get into this Documents folder for some mod stuff, so make sure you know where that's at. Your solution name, the solution, if you've never done any programming before, the solution is the actual file that you're going to open to do any edits. Because your mod is going to be a compilation of a lot of different files, the solution file is the one that we open to edit, and then the name is kind of the friendly name that we were going to give it. So we're just going to keep this one as default mod, and we're going to click OK. And this is going to give you, again, that spot where you can put in general information. Now this is the stuff that people are going to see when they're looking at your mod on the Steam Workshop. So keep that in mind. I'm going to click Finish. And it's going to go ahead and create our mod files. And occasionally it says it's not responding, but it'll get there. And here we go, and it says we've created an XCOM 2 mod project, and indeed we have, and that's great. So the absolute first thing that you need to do before you get started is we need to set up a couple of different things within the IDE to make sure that we can debug our mod correctly, and then we'll go through what some of the stuff on the side means. So up at the top under Tools, we're going to click on that and head on down to Options. And this is going to give you a bunch of different options, including your theme for your IDE that you have. But we want to go all the way down to XCOM 2 here. We're going to open that up and click on General. Now you've got to select your Xcom 2 install path and your Xcom 2 user path. Now you'll notice for me these are in different locations. This is the location of the software development kit, or the SDK. That is going to be that big 50 gigabyte download I showed you guys at the beginning of the video. So wherever that is at, this is what you're going to want to put here. Your Xcom 2 game install is obviously going to be where your game is located. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if yours ends like this, you've done it wrong. It needs to, both of these need to make sure they end with Xcom game. If you just point it to the Xcom 2 folder, it's not going to be able to find the exe, and you're not going to be able to debug your game, or your mods rather. So make sure that both of these end in Xcom game. You can see mine are on different hard drives. That's totally fine. It doesn't matter exactly where they are, but you do need to point the development environment to both of those. And that's going to be for when we're debugging. I'm going to click OK. Alright, now, like I said, a lot of this is still emerging information, and I'm not necessarily the 100% authority on all of this, so some of this is subject to change. Some of this, I'm going to admit, I'm not 100% sure on what it is or where it goes, but I wanted to get a quick video out to hopefully jumpstart some people into the modding scene that aren't all about reading across several different posts on Reddit as to where all this information comes from. So, over on the left-hand side here, this is our Solution Explorer. These are all of the different files that we have within our mod. Most notably here, we've got our mod preview.jpg. Now this is what people are going to see on the Steam Workshop, that image. If they open up your mod, this is what they're going to see. We also have a couple of different files like configs, which it's going to load in a couple of basic ini files for us. And you can see that this is adding in lines to the Xcom editor, engine, and game files that identify our mod based on its name. And then there's a few other files here, content and src, and then also localization. And the localization file is what we would use to create localized text. So if your mod had, say, some UI changes to it, the localized text would say, this is what it says in Russian, this is what it says in English, this is what it says in etc. And this is where it actually draws it in, that in-game text from. We're mostly going to be focusing today on the config folder over here. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to right-click on this config folder up here, and we're going to click Add, and then New Item. And from New Item, we're going to click Configuration File, and click Add. And this is by default going to bring us into a file with a comment saying a configuration file. Now, for those of you that have never done any coding before, when you comment things out, that essentially means that when the engine is reading these scripts, it's going to ignore that stuff. So anything that I type here is just for me. And that means that I can use these as notes along the way. If you want to be friendly to the people that are downloading your mods in the Steam Workshop, you'll want to comment your code well so that people can kind of reverse engineer what you've done. And Firaxis has done an okay job of commenting through some of their code. So that's what that is. So first things we want to do is we want to figure out what ini files we want to edit. So I got a window pulled up over here. The ini files for, get over there. The ini files for Xcom 2, there's actually 3 different locations that you can find them. Now content-wise, there isn't a difference between these 3 locations, but the exact name we're going to use does matter, and there is a difference there. So the first is through the actual directory for your game. So I've got this on my G drive. Say that 3 times fast. Games, Steam Library, Steam Apps Common, Xcom 2, Xcom Game, Config. So that looks familiar to any of you that have been doing PC gaming for a while. Obviously, that's your just default Steam directory, install directory, Xcom 2 config. This is similar, although it's actually the directory for the software development kit. So we're not going to be using these ini files, but they are available for reference. And then also here over, like I said, on OneDrive, which I'm not crazy about, but through your documents, My Games, Xcom 2, Xcom Game, and Config, there's also a host of your configuration files there. Why do we care about these? Why do we care where they are? Well, these are the ini files that we're going to be making edits to that allow us to change things within the game. So a big one right here is the one called character stats. Now this is the location where all of the enemy behavior, as far as their raw metrics, not their AI, but the things that they can do. How far can they move? How many experience points are they worth when they die? What's their health? Stuff like that. That's located in here. I would definitely recommend that you have a nice programming style text editor like Notepad++. If you're going to be looking through these, it does make things a lot easier. So we're going to click Edit with Notepad++ here, and I'll pull it off of my monitor over there. And in here we can see, look, these are all of the different soldiers and different characters that we have in the game and what they do. So we can see here, here's a Psy Zombie X2 character template. Here are, obviously, it's alert level, armor chance, armor mitigation, armor piercing, crit chance, defense, HP, mobility, so on and so forth. So you can see in here that you've actually got access to pretty much everything within the characters. So it's a little bit more complicated than this, but essentially what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be changing these numbers over here, and those are going to allow us to make pretty much any change that we want to the game. So I'm going to pop this over on my second monitor here for a second while we get into editing here. So the first thing that we want to do, or I guess about the fourth thing that we're actually going to do, is we want to rename this configuration file to have the name of the configuration file that we want to add to, so that when Xcom loads our configuration file up, it knows where it needs to put all of this information. So we can see here the ini file that we just opened, the configuration file. The two can be used interchangeably. ini is obviously the extension. Xcom game data underscore character stats.ini. That is the name of the configuration file that all of that character data that I was telling you about is in. Now, we're going to be editing this one today, but feel free to look around in all of these different ini files and figure out, you know, maybe there's something that you want to edit in here. You know, we've got AI jobs, camera, class data, etc., etc. The ones that I'm most comfortable with are the character stats, because that's, like I said, mostly just changing numbers. But this should, in theory, apply to pretty much any of these configuration files. So we're going to rename our configuration file that we've just created. We're going to give it the same name as the one that we have. So we're going to call this Xcom game data underscore character stats.ini. Boom. Alright. So now we have our configuration file. Now let's head back on over to our character stats here. Now, if you want, you can copy this entire file verbatim and then start making changes through it to that. But more than likely, you're not going to be doing a complete game rebalance. You're going to just be rebalancing one or two units. So the first thing that we need to do is we do need this top text up here, xcom.game x2 character underscore default characters. We do need to make sure that we load that in. So we're going to head back here and pop that in right up at the top. And then we're going to head through and let's find a unit that we want to mess around with a little bit. So one of the units that a lot of people have been complaining about is the Stun Lancer. So let's see if we can find that. So Control F to search. We'll search Stun Lancer. And you'll see here the Stun Lancer actually appears a few times under supported followers and things like that, but what we're looking for is when the Stun Lancer's name comes up in purple in these brackets up at the top. So we're just going to keep kind of hitting enter through all of these, and there we go, Advent Stun Lancer, ADV Stun Lancer M1. Alright, so now what does the M1 mean? Well, Xcom usually has most of its units split up between an M1 variant, an M2 variant, and an M3 variant. And that is, as the game goes on and gets longer, some of the default units will reappear with different things. So, for example, an Advent Stun Lancer M1 is the first Stun Lancer you'd see in the game, whereas the M2 and the M3 get added onto armor and things like that, and those maybe appear in later games and at more frequency at higher difficulties. So again, we're just going to copy this guy. So Control C, hop back over here, Control V, and now we've got our XCOM 2 character template for the Advent Stun Lancer M1. Okay. We're going to hop back over here and let's figure out what we want to change. So let's say, I don't know, 4 HP, that's kind of a lot of health. So we're going to take this, we're going to copy it, we're going to paste it in here. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky. This is where things are about to get intense. So what we want to do with our character base stats, estat underscore HP equals 4, is we want to put a minus right in front of that. What that's going to do is that's going to load up the configuration file, and it's going to remove this line from the configuration file. But then, of course, it needs to have some health, so we're going to put the same line back in, only with a plus here, and we're going to change it. Let's say we want the Stun Lancer to only have 1 health. Okay. So what did I just do here? What I did is I loaded up our XCOM 2 default characters. I loaded up the Advent Stun Lancer Mark 1, or M1. I removed the line that gave him 4 health, and I added in a line that gave him 1 health. Okay. You can do that an unlimited number of times. You can add as many different parameters and things in as you want. You can add, you can subtract. In fact, if you look in through this configuration file a little bit more, you can even see, you know, it's got supported followers. These are the troops that can kind of spawn with him. Hack rewards. What rewards are available when you skulljack the Stun Lancer? A bunch of this stuff that, again, I haven't had much time to mess around with, but, you know, feel free to just start kind of coming in here, changing some numbers around and see what happens. But we're not quite done yet. The mod isn't quite as easy as that. So like I said, the M1 variant, now if you're actually making a serious mod that you wanted to rebalance all the Stun Lancers, what you'll probably want to do, and in Notepad++, we can actually just highlight this guy, and then Control F, and we can find the same ones. And we would probably want to change this to M2, and then we could hop down to M2 and we could see here's the M2 variant, so this is the one that appears more. You can see this one, as compared to the M1, has a 100% armor chance, which means that there's a 100% chance that he'll spawn with a point of armor. So that's one of the main differences. And then of course the M3 as well will also spawn with armor, and has a few other goodies in store. But you also notice that his XP kill score goes up, so those are maybe some things that you want to work with. But what's important to note, and this is one thing that I didn't realize when I started with working with XCOM mods, and one thing that the Reddit community has been great in helping me understand, is that when you edit just this default here, all we've done is we've changed the Stun Lancer for rookie difficulty, for the lowest difficulty settings. Obviously, on higher difficulties, Stun Lancers don't have 4 HP. On, I believe, normal, they have 6 HP, and so on and so forth. So, what we need to do is actually further down in the config files, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and search, _diff_1 will take us down here, and now we can see, oh, look at this. At the bottom of the config file, we have Advent Stun Lancer M1 _difficulty _1, or _diff_1. What this says is on difficulty 1, which we're assuming that rookie is difficulty 0, so this would be on veteran, it's going to make these changes to the Stun Lancer. So, hey, on difficulty 1, everything stays the same except, the base stat is 6, so he's going to have 6 HP, 14 movement, and so on and so forth. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are copying our difficulties in as well. And so again, I'm going to take here, I'm going to go minus the 6, and then plus, and copy you, and paste, change that to a 1. Again, probably don't make this mod because it's going to make the game a little bit too easy, but for experiment's sake, oops. Alright, and then we can make things a little bit easier on ourselves here, and we can copy this guy, difficulty 2, and then difficulty 3. Now, the one thing that we do need to keep in mind is obviously on higher difficulties, he also doesn't have 6 health, so we do have to head back in here. We do have to see on difficulty 2, okay, on difficulty 2 we can see here he's got 7 health. So on difficulty 2 we're going to change this. We want to remove the line that gives him 7 health. And on difficulty 3, and this would be on legendary, he has 8 health. So we want to change this to an 8. Alright, looking good. Okay, so if you've not worked in a integrated development environment before, you usually want to make sure you're clicking Save All. That'll save changes to all these files, so we're going to click Save All up at the top. Your first save may take a little bit of time. That is normal. Alright, and so we've got our mod here. Things are looking pretty good. So what are we supposed to be doing here? Okay, so we've got our comments at the top to tell us this is a configuration file. Anything I type, it's just for me, blah, blah, blah. Game doesn't care about that. That's for you. Next, we're going to load in our XCOM 2 default characters. Next, we're going to take our Advent Stun Lancer M1, so the first appearance of him in the game, and we're going to remove the line that gives him 4 health, and we're going to add a line that gives him 1 health. And we're going to do that on every difficulty level. Now, this is going to work, but it's only going to work while the M1 stun lancer is still in effect. Once the game switches over and starts spawning the M2s and the M3s, then we're going to run into some issues. So if you really wanted to make this mod, what you need to do is you need to copy and paste all of this stuff for the M2 and the M3 respectively. A lot of copy and pasting in code. But for right now, this looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and test what we're working on. So up at the top here, we can click Start Debugging. What this is going to do is it's going to compile our mod, which is going to take a couple of minutes, a minute or two, first time around. And then what it's going to do is it's going to give us the launcher for XCOM 2, so we can click Start Debugging. You can also press F5. And this will give us the launcher for XCOM 2, where we'll be able to select our mod, and then we're going to load into the game and be able to play it from there. So I'm going to let this go ahead and compile, and we will come back right after it is finished, and I will show you guys all how to test your mod in-game. Alright, and welcome back to our XCOM 2 mod tutorial. So here we are in XCOM 2, and you'll notice that since we launched it from the debugging menu, things look a little bit different. We actually have the debugging console pulled up right now. So we've got a few different options on the side here, but the one that we're most focused with is going to be down here. You can see that we have a button called Tactical and a button called Strategy, in addition to replays and the tutorial and options and all that kind of stuff. So what are these? The strategy layer will load us into a game. We're going to be on the Avenger. We can do all that sort of Avenger stuff. So if you're making a mod that allows you to equip weapons or kind of works on that layer, this is what you're going to want to click on. However, we made a mod that affects the tactical gameplay or the actual combat, so we're going to click this button. After a brief loading screen, you can see here, oh, what's this? Okay, well, because XCOM 2 uses randomly generated maps, what it's going to do is it pops us into here. We can actually choose our map data, blah, 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 blah. We can choose a squad, all that kind of stuff. But what we're going to do, we're actually just going to click Start Battle, and it's going to generate a map for us randomly. Now, there are faster ways to do this. There are console commands that will actually just drop you into testing maps, but for demonstration's sake, I figured I'd show this off. This will generate a random map every time, and then it will also, as soon as we're done, it's going to drop us in just as if there was a normal game. Here we are. You're going to get a couple of those red screen errors. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Nothing's broken on me yet. Central's going to give us this little talk, and okay, here we are in game, except we don't want to play XCOM 2. We want to actually just check and see if our mod worked. So if you press the tilde key, which is that one right under escape and to the left of 1, you're going to bring up your console. And what were we testing? We wanted to make sure that we could lower the health of an Advent Trooper. So I actually have a command stored here. It's called drop unit. So drop unit Advent Stun Lancer M1. Now you can use this drop unit command with any unit in the game. What you need is his name from that configuration file. So you remember when we were going through that configuration file, all of those different units that were in those purple brackets, those are all different things that we can spawn in here. But right now we've got the Advent Stun Lancer M1. So we're going to press enter. That'll spawn him right in front. And look at that. Only 1 bar of health. Alright. Now to confirm, and everything else about him is the same, and actually, because we didn't put in a value, he's actually controllable, so if you ever want to play some missions with aliens just for fun, you can do it in the debug mode. Now, just for completeness sake, we're going to make sure, if we click Change Difficulty here, you can see we're on Veteran Difficulty. That's what the map will spawn you on by default, although you can change that. So we're going to check, okay, well, let's go to Legend Difficulty. Change Difficulty, yes. And if you press the up arrow, it'll recall your last command. Drop units in, and okay, good. He's got 1 health on Legend difficulty, 1 health on Veteran difficulty. Because I spawned this guy on Legend, if I had a separate value for his health, let's say on Legend difficulty, we wanted to make things really tough, and we gave him like 12 health. Because I spawned this guy on Legend difficulty, he would have 12 health. This guy would not, his health would not change. He would have 1 because that's when I spawned him. And that's similar to how the game is going to work. If you created this mod, and then you load up the game with Stun Lancers, you already had some Stun Lancers, you know, you quit mid-mission with a save, and you've got some Stun Lancers hanging out, they're still going to have full health, because those ini files happen every time that a character is loaded in, not when the game starts. So, that's pretty much it, guys. The XCOM 2 modding scene is definitely in its infancy. There's a lot of stuff that is still kind of coming out. Not a whole lot of mods are made, but these ini mods are incredibly powerful if you can take the time to kind of learn what all of the different things do and stuff like that. So again, big thanks to the r/xcom2 mods and the r/xdev subreddits, and a lot of people over there. Again, I don't take a whole lot of credit for a lot of this information. A lot of it came from those guys over there. They're doing some great work. So yeah, happy modding, guys. Hopefully this guide helped you out a little bit, at least gave you a head start. Do us a favor, if you start working on XCOM 2, you figure out some new stuff, you know how to do something that you haven't seen before, head over to one of those subreddits that I just mentioned, make a post. We're, as a community, we're all kind of trying to figure this thing out. The documentation was a little bit light. So as a community, we're all trying to figure this stuff out so that we can make some good mods, and anything that you guys can throw at us would be appreciated. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you in the next video.